Welcome back. This is the part 2 for the technical test tutorial. If you have not seen the part 1, then go here and come back because it's gonna be good. Now, to do the products, we have to know first what is our endpoint giving us. So I'm gonna copy this here. I love this JSON viewer because it allows me to format and then view it in a more convenient way. So you can see we have a list of product objects and we have like a ton of different parameters here. We're not gonna model everything here. We're gonna do the essentials. I can see here, I'm gonna make this smaller here, and we don't need the simulator right now. We can see that we need to map this. I'm in products. I'm gonna create an entity called product entity. We can see here, so let's do a class product entity, and we are gonna do the title. We can see here, so I know this is a string, so a final string title, and then the description, final string description. I also want the price, which is it's a double, we can see here, so we're gonna do a final double price. Just in case, I don't think I'm gonna use this ID, but just in case I'm gonna do the ID if I need it. And I wanna do the images. So we can do a final, it's a list of strings. Also, we need to bring this here. Also, no S. And now we need to do the toString method. And now we are done for the entity. Now with this in place, now I can go to repositories and I can create product repository. And this is an abstract class that's going to be called the products repository. And it's going to be a future. So what we need to do is, okay, this is a list of product entity. Now I'm going to call this products request. Now that we have this, I'm going to go into the use case and create a products use case, class products use case. Now we inject the product repository. We're going to initialize in the constructor. And I'm going to copy the same signature. And I'm going to call this the products use case. And I'm going to return the products repository dot products request. Now we are done with the domain layer. Let's start working on the data layer. So I'm going to create a model, product model.dart class product model extends the product entity. Now we create constructor call to super. We need a way to convert the raw JSON from the server into local Dart object so we can perform operations on it. The way we do that is with a factory product model.fromJSON. We do a map string dynamic argument, that's what a JSON is. And now we return the product model. If you can see here now, what we need to do is to refer to the specific key. So we say JSON on the key ID. Then we do this for every single one of them. Now in images, since this is, remember, a list of strings, we can't just pass in JSON images because we have to iterate through every single string in the list. So now what I'm going to do is a final raw images, JSON on the key of images, and I say as list dynamic. And then I do a final images equal the raw images dot map, and in here I'm gonna say a dot string. So I'm making sure that everything inside is a string, and then lastly I'm making it a list. And now I can pass in the images. Now you can see that I have warnings here. It says the argument type dynamic can't be assigned to the parameter type int, and the reason is because I'm using very good analysis. If you're using the default linter, it's not going to warn you of anything. But the point of doing this is, right now, this is a dynamic value. But we know that, for instance, the title expects a string. So now what's going to happen is, because this is a dynamic value, Dart is going to infer on runtime. So instead of catching the problem at compile time, you might run into runtime problems. Because let's say, what if this title, for some reason, it's not a string? So now I'm going to use the cast syntax to say, okay, this is an int and this is a string. Let me copy this real quick. A string, a string. The price has to be a little bit different. And the reason is because in the JSON, we might have int or doubles, right? But I want every single one of them to be a double. So now what I do, put some parentheses here, and I say as num. None is because both ints and doubles have the num class as a parent class, dot to double, so I'm making sure that each one of them is a double. And then on images, we leave as is because we already did the work here. Now, you could leave this as is, but we are not handling the cases of what if this list comes empty for some reason. And we are saying here that this is going to be a list, right? And it's going to have values in it. But what if the values aren't there? So we're going to have a type error, right? Because we are doing this map operation here. We are saying, okay, this will never be null. My concern is that maybe the API has some problem, and then my reviewer is looking at the app, and then it's going to be broken. So I'm going to be extra careful here, and I'm going to say the list might be null, and if it is null, I'm using the null operator, give me an empty list. And if the int is null, give me 0. If the string is null, give me an empty string. The description is null, give me an empty description. And now I'm going to do the same with price here. So we're going to say it can be nullable. And now we need to access in a safe way. So we access with this operator. And then if it is null, I'm going to give a 0. And the images we are already doing with the list. So that's what I will do. And now we are done with the product model and we can move on. Now there is one more key that I want to get. So I'm going to go back to the product entity and I'm going to add a final string thumbnail. And let me add also here. Now we're done. We can go back to the model. And in the factory, we also need to do the same thing we did. So now we are truly done with the product model. We can move on. Now we can create the product repository implementation. And this is going to implement product repository interface. I have products request. And now I'm going to inject the data source, but I don't have the data source yet. So let's do that first. Product data source. It's an abstract class again. We have to do, it's a future list of product model. And it's gonna be called, I'm gonna call it get products. It's missing one of these. Now, the important thing to know is that at this level, we're not talking about entity anymore. It's the model. When we are in the repository, we are talking about entity. But then after we cross this bridge, from here forward, we're talking about models. So now that it's a future list of product model, we can go back to the product repository implementation. I'm going to inject the product data source, create the constructor. I'm going to return products data source dot get products. Now that we have this, we're basically missing now the data source implementation. So product data source implementation dot dart, and then we're going to implement product data source. This is where the actual networking call is happening. So now we have the get products. You see how elegant it is? Like we are connecting these layers through interfaces, so I can change the implementation whatever I want and it's not going to affect the program. Like I really love clean architecture. So now that we have these get products, we are going to do something that is very similar to what we did with authentication. Now let me get the URL, which is this one, and I'm gonna create the deal instance or deal client. Now I'm gonna do a const URL. I need to get the JSON. So I'm gonna do the final JSON. I'm gonna await the deal client dot get because it's a get method. I'm gonna pass in the URL. So I know that this is a map string dynamic. And now that we have this JSON, we have to return the list of products. So I'm going to return. Now we have to do JSON.data, which is the actual data that we want. If you can see here the JSON, we have this products key. So we have to refer to this products key so we can have access to all these objects. So we do JSON data. Now we're going to add the products key. I have to say that this is a list because I need to have access to the map operator. I'm going to do map and I'm going to map each product. I'm going to change this to product so it's more clear. What I'm doing is I'm going to pass that product model dot from JSON into each product object from the JSON, right? So now I have to say this is a as map of type string dynamic. And then in the end, I have to convert this to a list, because the error here is you can see that a value type iterable can't be returned from the method getProducts because it has a return type of list. When we do the map, it doesn't automatically make it a list, it makes it an iterable. We have to do to list to make this work. But now we are missing here the exception handling, right? This is just doing like the happy ending. Now I'm going to get these, I'm going to extract. Now we do a try, catch, and we are gonna put this inside. Now, if it does go wrong, we're gonna do the same thing we did before. Now I'm gonna throw the deal exception handler that we did, dot handle exception, and I'm passing this e as an argument. Now we are done with the data and the domain layers, and we can go to presentation. Now we move on to the block. We go to first the product state. Let me change this to state first, so it's clear. Initial state. Now we copy. We also have a success state, failure state, and a loading state. In the success state, we need the payload from the response we're gonna get. So a final. It's a list of type product entity products. We create the constructor. Now we do const, and we are gonna copy the props. And in the failure, we need the error message, so final string message, const again, and the props, and we are done for the states. Now we move on to the event. We have only one event here. It's a final class products trigger event. It extends products event. It also has the props for good measure. And if you don't know what sealed class is in final class, it's a new syntax in Dart 3. Sealed means that the class can only be extended or inherited inside the library, which means this file. And the final means that this class does not allow any inheritance. So in the case of events and states, this makes the code safer and it makes more sense. Now we move on to the block itself, bring in the use case, final product use case. We then load it into the constructor. Now we go to the block function, and first we emit a loading state. Then we get the response, which is the products. Final response equal await the products dot products use case. And this is a sync. And we emit a products success state, and we put in the payload of the response. This is only the happy ending, so now we're gonna do the exception handling. Cut this, try, then catch. I have to check if E is custom exception, then I emit products failure state, and the message is e.message. Now we're done with the block. We can finally go to the UI. We convert this to a stateful widget because we need to trigger the event in the init state. So it's the first thing that it's gonna do before everything. Before it builds the widget tree, block provider.of, we specify the block, which is products block. We add then an event to the stream, which we know is the products trigger event. And we have to add the super.init state. Now we have the column. We create a block consumer. We specify what is the block that it's listening to, and it's the products block, comma, product state. What the block consumer is, it's a combination of the block listener with the block builder. Because since we are listening to the same products block, I'm gonna use the listener to display an error with this snack bar, and I'm gonna use the builder to build the product itself. So we come to builder, and I'm gonna leave this like this, empty for now. And I come into listener, the same thing. So now we have builder and we have the listener. So I'm gonna do the listener first. Now in the listener, I do an if the state is products failure state, I want to display a snack bar. Scaffold messenger.of context show snack bar. We pass in a snack bar widget, and in the content we pass a text, and we're going to take the error from the state. So it's state.message. Now in the builder, we add an expanded. Inside the expanded, a sized box with a width of 400. As the child, I'm going to add a list view.builder. In the item builder, I'm going to leave this empty for now. Oh, it can't be const, so remove this const. What the list view builder is, it's a way to build things on demand. So it builds lazily. This is extremely efficient, and you should use this if you don't know the total amount of products. So this is going to build in a very efficient way. Now, inside of this, I have to check the state, if the state is successful. So I'm cutting this, and I'm checking if the state is products success state, then I put this back in. And now in the list view.builder, in item count, I say state.products.length. So this is going to tell the list view builder how many items are there in total. Now to build this list view, we are missing two widgets. We are missing the product widget, which is this card that you see, and we are missing a product detail. So when I click, I have to navigate, and it's a detail screen. So let's do those now. In the widgets folder, I create a product file, stateless widget called product. We create all of these variables, which are the same ones that are in the entity, and we load it in the constructor. My linter asks me to do required first and optional later, so the linter helps a lot to keep organized. We create a variable called radius. This is going to be used to do the radius of the rectangle border. Now, a padding, edge insets symmetric with a vertical of 10 and a horizontal of 20. Const. The padding has a child, which is a card. In shape, we do a rounded rectangle border, border radius dot circular, and we pass in that radius variable. It doesn't allow const here, so I'm going to remove it and add the const in the edge insets. And the card has an elevation of 5. This is basically a shadow. The card has a column child, a sized box with a height of 300, and the sized box has a child with a clip rect. This is basically so we can clip the photo. The clip rect has a child with a image.network with a fit of box fit.cover, and then comma thumbnail. So this is where the image is gonna actually appear. Now we add another column with children, text style, and this is so we can make it a little bit prettier. I'm gonna do a better font weight with a font weight.bold. This is gonna be the price. We open a string so we can insert a price. So US, the escape character, $sign again, and price. So now we need a title, so I'm gonna copy the price, put it above, and then change this string to just $sign title. Remove unnecessary string interpolation. Okay, just title. I realize that I'm not using all these variables, so I'm gonna delete the ID and the description. It's important to not leave any loose ends. You are going to be graded on that, so just the necessary to make it work. Now we basically finished this outside card, and we are ready to go to the product detail. Stateless widget, product detail. We're bringing all the variables. We put it in the constructor. We convert actually to a stateful widget. So we can do a init state here, and I want to trigger the fetch of the product again here. Block provider.of context. I specify it's a products block. I add to the stream the products trigger event. Now you can see here in the simulator, when we are inside, we have an app bar because I want this back button here and I want this title here. So let's do the scaffold. App bar widget, center title true, title, text widget, and we pass in the title from the constructor. We have to do actually widget.title when it's stateful widget. Now we move on to this overview. The scaffold has a body. I pass a column, text overview, and I want a nice style. So style, text style, font weight, weight.bold, and a font size of 25. Now we add a block builder. We're gonna check if the state is successful or if the state is loading, so let's do that. If state is products loading state, then I return a sized box that has a circular loading progress indicator. Now, there is a more elegant way to do this. You could use something like Skeletonizer that's gonna give like a shimmer effect on top. This is just a generic loading. So if you wanna do it prettier, if you have time, then you can take a look at that. It's a great package, adding const and const again. Else if the state is products success state, then I return a size box inside with a height of 300. It has a child, which is also a list view.builder. The reason I'm using the list view builder here is because I don't know how many images I'm gonna have, and I want it to scroll horizontally. Scroll direction axis.horizontal, comma, item count state.product.length. In the item builder, I add a row image.network with a fit of box fit.cover. That's gonna make the image cover the entire space, comma, widget.images, and I'm passing this index. So I realized that I don't have the images here. I have the thumbnail, and that's not what it is. It's actually the list of string called images. Change here in the constructor. I'm gonna come back here in the list view builder. You can see that it's working now. So I'm using the index from the item builder to build each image. And then else if the state is a product's failure state, then I'm gonna return just a text, failed to load the pictures. And then we have an error here that says the body might complete normally, causing no to be returned. So you have to return something in all cases. So we are missing a last else, return a size box. Now I add a gap of 10 pixels. This is where we're gonna add the description and the price after the image, padding with a edge insets.all with a value of 20, child, column. Now inside children, I add the text style, font size 18, and it's the widget.description. And then I'm gonna add another text, and instead it's gonna be the price again. Now we're done for the product's detail. We can go back to the page. In the item builder, now I'm adding the gesture detector. This is so we can click. We're gonna do the product. Inside the list view builder, we have the index argument here, and we have the payload from the state. So now we can do this state.products, the index.title. And we do the same thing for every one of them. So price, the same thing, and the thumbnail. Oh, sorry, this is index here, but price here. And we do again, and it's thumbnail. Now, I want to do a test run. I want to see how it's going until now, but the consumer, he asks me that can't be null. The block consumer is asking me to return something. So I'm gonna just do an else here real quick. Else return a size box. I realized I was missing here return statements. Let's add return and return up here in the expanded. Okay, now we have an error here. The same one that happened with the auth. We have to provide this dependency. So I'm gonna go back to our get if you guys remember on the first lesson, on the first video. So let's do that first. We created this in the first video, so we have to do the same for the products. A products dependencies. I already explained this in the first video, so I'm gonna do a fast forward now. Now it's done. We have the block and the dependencies registered. We bring it to the init injection. It's already in the main, if you remember. So it's already here, so I'm injecting. And I add another block provider, SL products block, and that's it. Let's try again. So even after providing here with the products block, I was still getting a no provider error. And I found out that the reason is because this material app was up here. It came first and then the multi-block provider, and it has to be the other way around. So multi-block providers, then the material app, and then the login page. Now you can see that it's working. Let's go back to products page. Let's put the column in a center widget, so it's not like on the left here. Now it's centered. And we have this beautiful scroll working. And now we need to do the last part, that is, I have to click this and it needs to go somewhere else. The gesture detector has an on tap, and we're going to use this to navigate to the detail. We do a navigator.push material page route, and we do the go back, we do the return, then we return the product detail. And it's the same thing we did with the product. So let's do that again. Stay.products index ID, title, description, price, and lastly, images. Now we continue with else if the state is loading state. I'll return an expanded center circular progress indicator. And then if it fails, I want to add a button so the user can reload the page. So expanded center with an elevated button as a child, unpressed, and then child, the child, a text, reload page, and the unpressed. I'm gonna trigger the event here, the same event. So as I was trying to run this, I was running again into a provider not found error. So I found what the problem was. Go back to product detail, and you have to add in this block builder the type. So it was missing. So a products block, now a products state. And also it's not state.products.length, it's actually widget.images.length, because the length is not coming from the state, it's coming from here. So because otherwise you're gonna get this range error thing. Now we can see that we can click on any product, and the only thing now that I think we're missing is an app bar at this level so that we can go back to the login screen. So let's add that and wrap it up. We go back to products page, scaffold, app bar, add an app bar widget, center title true. With a title you can say, I don't know, product store. Oh, it has to be a widget actually, not a string directly. There we go, we have the app bar now here, and I can click here and we can go back to the login. This was quite a journey. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful to you. If you have any questions, suggestions, what should I do next for Flutter, because I love this framework, subscribe, like, share. It means a lot because making these tutorials is a Herculean effort. So if you want to see more stuff like this, please support the channel, and see ya on the next one.